This is just a little warm-up to introduce you to Module 4, Lesson 4. So we're going to do 3 examples and just kind of give you an idea of what you're going to do when you're measuring perimeter, circumference, and area in this module. So it's just a fast little 1-page sheet just for practice. So perimeter, curbing that surrounds a grass yard. So that would be an example of perimeter. Usually the word around, surround, those are usually good hints that it's going to be a perimeter problem. So if you look around the room you're in, look at that little baseboard around the outside of the room. It's around the outside of a room. That wouldn't be an example of perimeter too. If you decided you were going to replace your baseboard, you would find the perimeter of the room in order to figure out how much wood you would need to buy. So here, if we have, let's say, a garden, oh, this says a grass yard, and we want to put curbing around it, you know how some people have the little cement around the outside, we would have to find the perimeter, the distance around the outside, in order to know how much how many little bricks or whatever you're going to use to buy. I always remember perimeter from Cops and Robbers shows. We have the perimeter of the building surrounded. So perimeter is always the distance around the outside. So perimeter would be 9 plus 4 plus 8 plus 3. So 9 plus 4 plus 8 plus 3. This gives me 13. This gives me 11. And I know you can use your calculator, but remember on the final you can't. So you don't want to like become brain dead not using your calculator in this chapter, and then all of a sudden the next day you go, oh, I got to take my final exam. I need to be able to do this without a calculator. So if it's something easy like this, don't just type it into your calculator. Use your good old brain. Keep it busy. So 13 plus 11 is going to be 24. So the perimeter is 24 yards. And I always like to tell students about the units at this step of the game. So when you're doing circumference or perimeter, and I'm just abbreviating there, the units are just what they are: yards, inches, feet, so on. When we're doing area would be like, so circumference is the distance around the outside of a circle. Perimeter is the distance around the outside. Area would be like, so if perimeter is mopboard or baseboard, area would be like tiling your room or laying carpet in your room. How much area do you have in that room? So area is length times width when we're doing a rectangle. But for area, the units are always squared. So when you go out and rent an apartment or buy a house, you buy it by the square footage. Oh, my house has 1,600 square feet. They're telling you what the area of the house is. If you had to buy carpet or tile or whatever, you would need 1,600 square feet in order to fill the house. So that's what area it is. So think of like carpeting. And then we have volume coming up in lesson 5, and volume is 3-dimensional. It's length, width, and height. So anytime you have a volume units, it's cubed. So this is super important to know because you have to know it for your test. Alex has you write an answer, then it has you use a drop-down menu to determine what the units are. So they'll have yards, they'll have yards squared, they'll have yards cubed, and then maybe they'll have feet squared or something like that. But you have to pick which one's appropriate. So circumference, perimeter, just keep the units. Area, is like square footage. The units are always squared, and volume is three-dimensional. It's like, I want to know how much sand can fill up my office. So a dump truck comes and dumps the sand. Usually sand is in cubic yards, so that would measure how much sand would fill up your room. It's three-dimensional. Okay, so super important there. So since this one was perimeter, that's why we just left it with yards. Okay, next one we have carpeting in the classroom. So as I said above, carpeting is area, because you want to know how much fills up the inside. Where perimeter is just around the outside, how much curbing, how much fence you need around your garden, things like that. So area fills up the inside like carpeting does. And if you look at your formula sheet, which you get to use a formula sheet for this chapter, and it's provided in the handouts, you can see the area of a rectangle is length times width. So area equals length times width. So I write that formula here, and then I just fill in. And remember, area is always in square footage. So length is 30 times the width, which is 20, and we can use our little shortcuts, no calculator needed. 3 times 2 is 6. Add the 2 zeros we have covered up. So this would be 600 square feet will be needed to carpet the classroom. 600 square feet, because area is always squared, as we wrote above. And circumference, a lot of students don't understand that circumference is really perimeter. It's the perimeter of a circle, but because it's a circle, we have a special name for it, circumference. But all it's doing is just finding the distance around the outside of the circle. So it's just like perimeter, but instead of for a flat with straight sides, it's for a circle. So we want to put a fence around our circular pool, and in this section they're going to have you give exact answers, and they're going to have you give approximate answers. So first thing we do is go to our formula sheet and we look up a circle. And there's 2 formulas for circumference. It doesn't matter which one you use. I like to use the second one myself. That's my favorite, just less numbers. So, and I have this little saying that one of my students taught me. Cherry pies are delicious. Apple pies are too. You're not always going to be able to have a formula sheet, so it's nice to have little different ways to help you remember it. So cherry pies delicious, apple pies are too. Isn't that cool? You can remember those 2 formulas with that little saying. But you get to use a formula sheet on your chapter 4 test, so you don't have to do any memorizing. So the first thing I do is look up circumference and bring the formula down. C equals pi times diameter. Okay, so this is another thing I've noticed that students struggle with a little bit in this chapter is what is diameter, what is radius? This is a radius. The radius goes from the center of the circle to the outer part of the circle. This is a diameter. So this whole thing here is the diameter. So just think of it, when they talk about the diameter of a tire, the diameter of a pool, they're talking about the distance all the way across. So you can see a diameter is equal to 2 radii. So radius plus radius equals diameter. So I know the diameter of this circle is 15 plus 15, 30 meters. And as I was grading these tests last semester, that was the #1 thing students missed on circle problems. They just grabbed the number that was given in the problem and didn't even pay attention whether it was a radius or a diameter. So if the formula says D, you need to make sure you have a diameter, not a radius. So to find the diameter, you take radius plus radius, or radius times 2. So this diameter is 30 meters. Okay, the next important thing we need to talk about for this one is what's the difference between exact and approximate. Exact means your answer will have pi in it. Because the minute you put pi in your calculator or you write 3.14, you've just approximated it. How do I know that? Pi goes on forever. You could never write what pi is equal to here because it goes on and on and on and on. So the only way to get an exact answer is by leaving pi in your answer. Where to get an approximate answer, you read the directions and see what it is they want you to use. So for this one, they want us to use 3.14. So I always get those ready right at the beginning. And then all I have to do is plug and chuck. So we have circumference exact. So this is going to be the exact. So that means leave pi in it. So circumference equals pi times diameter, and we just found the diameter to be 30 meters. So the circumference is 30 pi meters. So usually when you have a symbol variable, usually the number goes first, the symbol second, and then last is your units. And remember, circumference is perimeter, and we just set up here, perimeter is just the units. We don't do square, it's not area, we don't do cube, it's not volume, it's just the units. So that's how you would write the exact circumference. It will always have a pi in it because the minute you replace pi with a value, it is no longer exact because pi goes on forever. So 30 pi meters. Okay, so now we're going to do the approximate circumference, so 3.14 in place of pi. And then the diameter stays 30. And let's go ahead and practice on our calculator. So although that's a pretty easy one to do too. So 3.14, I think I just hit some weird buttons, didn't I? 3.14 times 30. So you just use the times sign over here, and that is 94.2. Still need the units on it, so it would be 94.2 meters. So this is by putting an approximation in for pi, I can get a number. This one, you cannot have approximation in for pi because this is an exact answer, so pi will always be in the problem. So same formula, just one has a substitution for pi, the other one you leave pi in it. And you have some more on the next page with the next video, so this isn't the only one you're going to see. You're going to do 2 or 3 more in your notes, so you're going to see some more. But that just gave you a little preview of what's coming up in Module 4, Lesson 4.